However, even with its content-heavy and teacher-centric model, there's plenty of room for criticism of this model in Japan. For example, as this cartoon shows, you can see the teacher standing in front of the room, and in the little word bubble it says pera pera pera, which is basically Japanese for blah blah blah. Meanwhile, the student showing initiative solves the problem, as it says by ren, which is basically times that by, and she's solving it with her calculator. However, most people in Japan have a lot of criticism of, let's say, this student-centered model, as it was implemented in the 1990s under a title called Yutori Kyoku, which roughly translates into constructivism. And this Doraemon cartoon illustrates this. And let's take this panel by panel. The student says, this constructivism thing is pretty hard to understand, and I'm not sure that I get it right. Its goal is supposed to make us more individualistic going forward. But its result is to have children who don't even know the most basic information. And if we become used to not having any doubts, which isn't doubts, questions, we can't help but become the nation's slaves, which means passive, let's say, subjects instead of citizens. Then he exclaims, is making us basically subjects instead of citizens the strategy of the education department? And Doraemon, his imaginary friend, in his ordinary deadpan says, well, if that's what you think, the solution is, or the strategy is, not to study. Don't let them use their, let's say, constructivism on you. However, we don't have to just look at Japan. We could look at other countries with teacher-centered models, such as Finland. And here's a picture from a Finnish classroom. As you can see, it's more or less teacher-centric. If you look at the arrangement of the classroom, both on the walls and also the arrangement of the desks, and even, let's say, the level of technology, it's very much a teacher-centric classroom. And if you can contrast that with, let's say, student-centric classrooms as commonly found inside the United States, such as this one here, you can see the difference between the Finnish and the Japanese classrooms as compared with the American classrooms. The arrangement of the students, the decoration on the walls, the types of, let's say, materials the teacher is using to get across their point. And just for, let's say, another classroom, here's one using technology in an elementary school, once again a student-centric classroom. Just on a visual level, you can see the differences between the American student-centric classrooms and, let's say, the teacher-centric and content-centric classrooms as found abroad. Now, we should remember why this matters. For example, if we look at the PISA scores in 2006 or 2009 that measure performance in different subjects across nations, we find that Finland and Japan, as well as Korea, which is very much the Japanese model, scoring very highly in math, science, and reading, while the United States is a laggard in comparison. For myself, my model of education is what Socrates called the ideal learning situation, which is a teacher and a student sitting across from each other on a log having a conversation. Unfortunately, what often happens is we put emphasis on one or other of this part of this equation, whether we put the emphasis on the teacher or the student, or the student, when we should be looking at the whole picture. And very often this gets lost. And really what the goal of education is to, let's say, restore the conversation as technology, time, and other types of factors interfere with, let's say, the ideal learning situation of having a conversation, a back and forth between teacher and student.